In the wake of the Riven changes on patch 9.10, Riven's win rate has plummeted across the board. Riven mains are upset, players playing against her feel happier and like there's more counterplay, so what now? Well?
Alright, let's see. Tippa, do you think Riven is broken after the E-nerf? The E-nerf doesn't matter, there's a Q buff, that's huge. Q buff is always better than the E-nerf, I would say. This Riven change is actually better for her than worse. Her mobility is way too high.
Why would TF Blade say this? Does he really think it's a buff? Let's look at the numbers for a second. Gathering data from u.gg, we can see that in Diamond, Riven's win rate definitely dropped a bit lower than before. In fact, if you look at all of the numbers, they're down across the board. Look at these numbers. From Bronze all the way to Diamond, Riven has a poor win rate now, and it has dropped significantly. Granted, she's a hard to play champion, but one thing to note as well is just how this happened. Clearly, there is a nerf to Riven somewhere here. Win rate does not mean everything, and I recently made a video about Akali and why her nerfs were pretty much justified despite her win rate being in the mid 40s. The point is though, Riven did have a solid win rate, around 51 to 53% for several patches in a row, steadily holding that high of a win rate. All of a sudden, after the patch goes live, she drops at every single elo. Obviously something had to change. But let's look at some high elo players. Viper right now is rank 6, and he's 3-1 in his last 4 Riven games, and he's going Death Dance into Spear of Sojin. Revenge is rank 22, he's 5-1 in his last 6 Riven games, and he is spamming Crit Riven. Adrian has an account that's ranked 73, and he's 10-4 in his last 14 Riven games, and he's playing many different styles of Riven. And Dakar is climbing through Diamond 2 right now smurfing, and he's won his last 5 Riven games playing Fleet Footwork Riven, though he's kind of known for using Fleet many times in the past anyway. While it's true that this is anecdotal evidence and it's only for one region being NA, I do want to use this to drive some discussion. These examples at the least should show you that if you're a good Riven player, she's more than good enough to win with. With the changes to Riven, it rewards more aggressive playstyles than ever before. Your level 9 20% CDR power spike is massive because your Q will be up much more often than before, allowing yourself to not only clear the wave and move around the map, but also of course push and gain advantages. Riven players who are active, pushing and constantly pressuring their opponents, and use their shield at the correct time, that way they're not punished as heavily for the E-nerf, might be able to punish the good matchups even harder than before. In theory, now the bad matchup should be quite a bit worse. My issue with Riven before her changes was just how easily you could get out of a lane without being punished. A Riven main didn't really care about a Jace or a Quinn, since you would always be able to kill them at level 6. In prior seasons, I felt that the Jace versus Riven matchup, or the Quinn or the Poppy or Urgot matchups, were nearly unbeatable and basically unwinnable. The changes to her shield cooldown have now made these matchups much harder and less safe, which in turn makes matchups where you can do really well, such as the Sion or Yasuo lanes, you will probably put them in the dumpster harder than before. Nowadays, poor Riven players can be abused much harder, and when playing against Riven, I recommend you save all of your cooldowns until after she uses her shield, because then you'll have a 14-second window to damage her, which is a massive window. The win rate per MMR bracket actually goes up with every single tier, meaning a silver, gold, and platinum Riven players respectively will be doing better in each elo, which is a decent indication that good Riven players will be fine, but bad ones will suffer, which is exactly what I think she needed with some of the changes that she got. It appears that the build still is going Conqueror, but exactly what you're supposed to be building will be changing per patch and after people kind of figure it out. There are also quite a few Rivens who are maxing W second due to the E nerfs. I'm not so sure if this is totally metagame and will be used every single time. I do think E second is still totally fine in certain matchups and most of the time, but don't be surprised that W second isn't totally viable as well. Another big thing to consider is that on this patch Conqueror was nerfed, and while it's only 2%, that's actually quite a big nerf to her sustain and damage, as well as all of the other users of Conqueror. Riot has also been looking into the idea of nerfing Death's Dance, which is a very important Riven item right now. She is a main user of this item along with Aatrox and Katarina at the moment, and if this item is touched, Riven will have to go back to some of her older, more squishy builds. And while in theory squishy builds should make her much worse, they're not all that bad right now, especially that crit Riven build that Revenge has been spamming and of course Adrian kind of invented recently. There is also a Taiwanese Riven player, Dog4Ni, who is known for his lethality Riven that has now swapped back to full lethality with a W max second after some of the changes. This is solid for her as her items are cheap like Ghost Blade and Dust Blade, and the snowball potential is out of this world. The only problem with this is that your laning phase and your tankiness suffers a lot, and if you have to play against something like Darius or Renekton, you're gonna get one shot. While it does seem that Riven, especially compared to where she was on the previous patches, is in a more balanced state, you will always have people that hate her, and you will always have haters, no matter what. You cannot please everyone, and you cannot make certain players like Riven. Everyone has champs they don't like. I think no matter what you would do to her, you cannot make me like playing against Zoe. I absolutely despise that champion, and I wish she was never put into the game. That's just the nature of the beast in League of Legends. Sometimes you just hate certain champions. Objectively, Riven is much worse for the majority of the players and the majority of the ELO brackets now, as a gold Riven player is going to have more windows and opportunities to be punished rather than before when they would get away with 1 HP and were super tanky. There's also a good chance that people could go to a more tanky version of Riven and make up for the fact that your shield was nerfed but go for a very tanky sustain build. In fact, even recently, even though Adrian kind of knocked on it and laughed at it, there was a tank Riven build that popped up, and Adrian was kind of trying it out and winning a couple of games, going things like Spirit Visage, Thornmail, Iceborne Gauntlet. He was really tanky with this build. In fact, there was a pretty funny post as well to the Riven mains Reddit where somebody did a 1v5 pentakill with this. I recommend checking out this build if you want to try something in norms. I don't know, it seems pretty cool. Adrian did say he was just trolling and messing around with it. I mean, heck, he even built Proto Belt in the previous day as well, so I don't know how good this is, but it's probably just okay. It's just funny though. At the highest level, I could still see guys like Viper hitting rank 1 playing Riven, which is not always because of Riven's state or required for her to be vastly overpowered. Viper has been rank 1 in the past several times and is a rank 1 caliber player. In fact, he just won Rookie of the Split in NALCS.
Their top lane.
Anybody that you're just like, oh, it's gonna be interesting.
Viper playing for FlyQuest top lane, that's kind of surprising.
Top lane, Viper is a young, new player. It's a liability, I think.
I don't think anyone can argue Viper is a downgrade from Flame.
They finish it here! Hunter's gonna hold the line, can definitely keep himself alive! The Requiem comes in, and that's the death song for Golden Guardian!